No, a goldfish does not have a 3-second memory. No, the North Star is not the brightest star. No, coal doesn't turn into diamonds. Surprised? There are literally hundreds of more pieces of information where that came from in my book, Facts That Aren't True. Click the link in the description to learn more. Welcome back, everyone, and today I'm going to be telling you that you are wrong rather than whoever the guest happens to be. I have plans to do a few of these, so hopefully they're popular and hopefully you guys like them. This video is going to be about Occam's razor and a few other ideas as well. Occam's razor is typically couched as the simplest explanation is the most likely to be true, but that is not what it actually originally meant. And that principle doesn't universally hold true either. The original form of Occam's razor does hold true more often than simply saying the simplest explanation is more likely to be true. We'll get there very soon, but I just want to tell you a little bit about William of Occam. Yes, like Leonardo da Vinci, his last name wasn't really Occam. He was from Occam. Occam is a small village in Surrey, which is in England. He was born in 1287 and he died in 1347, perhaps from the bubonic plague, we don't exactly know. He was a Franciscan friar, he was a philosopher and a theologian, and he worked on logic. William was a nominalist, which is very popular among skeptical atheist agnostics such as myself and most of the people I think that watch my videos. So he rejected the idea that universal forms or abstract entities really exist. He was not a Platonist. For Occam, only particular things existed. William also didn't invent Occam's razor, but he popularized it, and it was a major part of his work. He used it so often that it got called Occam's razor because he would apply it, and he was very persistent and consistent in his application of it. So people started calling it his razor. He would cut through logical problems by applying this principle that you should not multiply beyond necessity. And Occam did this because he was theologically motivated to do it. He thought that this would preserve God's absolute freedom and dominion and authority by not couching all these unnecessary and extra laws that constrain God's creation. Now, Occam, being a logical thinker and perhaps a contrarian by nature, that got him into trouble, especially because he had ideas about what papal authority should be. Pope John the 22nd actually called him up for a trial. In response, he fled and then lived pretty much the rest of his days under the protection of the Holy Roman Emperor, and Occam died in Germany. In the same way that Sherlock Holmes never once said, "It's elementary, dear Watson," William Occam never said the simplest explanation is usually the best. The way he would put it would be, he wrote it in Latin, but the way it would be translated is, plurality should not be posited without necessity. Another way we could word this is, don't make explanations more complicated than they need to be. But this is not the same thing as the simplest explanation is the most likely to be true. Because if that were the case, here's the great flaw in that. I could simply invoke, and this is a very popular thing to do, and it's fallacious reasoning, apologists will say, God did it. And they will insist that that is a proper application of Occam's razor. Because it's just one concept. We could use this for anything. I could say that unicorn fart dust blankets the whole earth and makes nature consistent in the way that it is. There's no such thing as the laws of physics or anything like that. All those crazy equations. No, it's just this one thing. We can see the difference if we look carefully at the way Occam's razor is actually written. Don't multiply beyond necessity. You should figure out the number of minimal facts, if we can call them that do explain the phenomena, and just going with the minimal facts should be sufficient in most cases. Now, this isn't a law, it's a heuristic. Heuristics, the way I understand them at least, are kind of like mental shortcuts or mental rules for trying to just do basic human reasoning without necessarily going to the calculator. Fancier way of putting that would be to say that this is about epistemic economy, being efficient about our claims about knowledge and the pursuit of knowledge. It really would be a waste of time to posit some huge, grand, complex series of explanations for things and then going out and searching for all of them. This is especially prevalent with flat earthers. No single explanation that flat earthers give unifies all of the observable phenomena that we see. Their explanation for why the sun sets, for why the sky has two different rotations, for why we always see the same face of the moon, no matter where you are on the earth, for why things fall down. There's a different explanation for every single one of those things, plus a million others that I didn't include. But assuming a spherical Earth going around the sun and gravity, two ideas unify every single observation that we make. We can see several examples historically of Occam's razor predicting the better and true explanation. For example, the heliocentrism versus geocentrism battle. The Earth and Moon really is a geocentric model, and you can treat the Earth and the Sun as geocentric. It doesn't matter. Your ability to make predictions into the future will not be different. We were incredibly successful for thousands of years making predictions going off of a geocentric Earth, Sun, Earth, Moon model. However, no geocentric model could explain the motion of the other planets without invoking these crazy epicycles. Early heliocentric models failed, like Copernicus and even Galileo, because they insisted that the orbits of the planets be perfect circles. Now, mathematically, that still doesn't work. You still have to invoke epicycles for that. But once you insert elliptical orbits, which the planets really do have, then epicycles completely disappear. Now, the planets either go around the sun or they go around the Earth. Both of those ideas are equally parsimonious. And yes, you do have to assume other things for heliocentrism, such as the elliptical orbits, but that one idea universally applies to everything and explains it. In medicine, doctors have to make statistical diagnoses all the time because it may take a while to get some sort of test result in. So a patient could have a runny nose, a fever, they could have fatigue, and a sore throat. Now, it's possible that they have a cold, and they have mono, and they have malaria, and they're experiencing an allergic reaction, or they could just have influenza. In the early 20th century, we didn't yet know what the hereditary molecule was. We knew nucleic acids existed, we knew fats existed, we knew proteins existed. Almost all scientists assumed that whatever transfers hereditary material, it had to be a protein, because proteins are far more complex. And so it was thought that proteins would have a wider array of functions. Well, we knew that proteins had a vast array of functions. So people thought for sure that a protein would be the hereditary molecule. Turns out it was DNA. Now, the logic of proteins are more complex, they can have more functions, therefore they would be more likely to be the hereditary molecule, isn't exactly flawed. But it turns out that DNA was perfect because of how simplistic it is in the way it forms and conveys information. Maybe the most popular, at least today, violation of Occam's razor is the UFOs or the UAPs. I get asked what I think about UFOs and UAPs a lot, and I basically always give the same boring answer. They're unidentified. It's literally in the name. Now, sometimes it is true that the simplest explanation is wrong. Newton's laws, for example, they are more simple than Einstein's general relativity, but general relativity, we know today, is the far more accurate and successful model for explaining things. And simple is a bit of a loaded term because it depends on the context. In science, simplicity often refers to mathematical elegance and fewer independent variables. It doesn't mean easier to understand. I think it's possible that people think they're following Occam's razor because they pick an idea that, at least to them, seems more simple to understand. It's very easy to fall for a fallacious application of Occam's razor. It happens all the time. I gave the example of God did it as being a satisfactory answer. It is definitely in our politics. The right is blaming immigrants and DEI and wokeness on basically every single problem, especially the problems they are creating. The left's explanation for almost everything is racism. To pretend that the problems we face in society are reducible just to that, is quite stupid. Now, I want to transition to something that is similar but not quite the same. We'll do that by me giving you a hypothetical. Zoe is a software engineer who lives in San Francisco. She takes her bike to work, she eats a plant-based diet, and she's passionate about climate change. I want you to make a judgment about these two statements. Zoe works at a tech company, or Zoe works at a tech company and is a member of an environmental activist group. Which of these is most likely to be true? The most likely to be true is A. Most people get this wrong. This was first proposed as what's called the Linda problem by Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman. I've read some of Daniel Kahneman's books. They're pretty dry, but they're really good. Steven Pinker's book, Rationality, talks about this kind of thing as well. And this is a really excellent book, too, if you just want to try to be a little bit better of a critical thinker. Now, this isn't Occam's razor. It's called the conjunction rule. The conjunction rule states that the probability of any two events both occurring together, A plus B, is always less than or equal to the probability of either event happening by itself. The conjunction problem is a law. It cannot be violated. Occam's razor, as we went through, is a heuristic. It's an assumption. It's a good guide, but it's not always exactly right. We get the conjunction rule wrong a lot when we try to judge things, and I think it's because the way we're programmed to simply have biases and opinions about things. You read the Zoe problem, and a little homunculus jumps up and down in your head saying, look, she can't just work at a tech company. That doesn't sound like Zoe. The Zoe I know is passionate about these things and would be a member of an activist group. But just create the Venn diagram and you can see that the total number of people that work in tech has to be greater than the number of people that work in tech and are activists. I tried to come up with a possible way to violate this, but I couldn't, and I don't think you can. I tried to get ChatGPT to come up with a violation, and it simply said, this cannot happen. The best I could come up with was an equal. So I said, Brittany is in the WNBA, Brittany is in the WNBA, and is a woman. Now those two things are equal. I can make A plus B equal to either A or B, but it can never go beyond. I know we have a lot of fun on this channel, but the point is for education and to help you be a better thinker. So hopefully that helped. See you tomorrow.